Hi, my name is Carolyn Shapiro. I'm a professor at the Chicago-Kent College of Law, and I'm here with my colleague, Felice. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Great. I'm Felice Batlan, and I too am a professor of law at Chicago-Kent College of Law.
We decided to make this video because Felice was scheduled to come and speak to my public interest class next week. And as we were talking about whether or not that was going to happen, she actually said, well, let me give you a call. And instead of emailing, she called me, which was genuinely a lovely thing to do and really wasn't about figuring out precisely what was going to happen in class. It was about something else. Felice, can you say a little bit about your decision to do that and what brought that about?
Well, one is that I think that phone call in a time of fear and crisis really means something to reaching out to somebody else and knowing that they're there and that the other person's there for one as well. And as we talked about, I've got a little bit of experience with this.
Yeah, can you tell us, you've actually lived through two major devastating events before this. I'll just say one was 9/11 and the other was Hurricane Katrina. And maybe before you tell your story, could you maybe say a little bit about just some of the lessons you have taken from those experiences?
Yeah, so one really, and we talked about this between us, is that when you're in the middle of a crisis, it seems like it's going to go on forever. And the reality is that things don't go on forever, but you've got to be able to think forward and not be trapped in the moment. And the next thing is action. What can we actually do in a time of crisis? Because action actually helps with both the anxiety one feels and it empowers you.
Great. And it occurs to me I should say when we're doing this. It's Thursday, March 19th, 2020. Since things are changing quickly, it's probably a good idea to mention that. So, Felice, can you talk a little bit about what happened first with 9/11 and what where you were, what you were doing?
So on 9/11, I was in New York City, where I'd lived most of my life. And I was a graduate student at NYU, but I had just left a law firm and actually an in-house counsel position where I worked on Wall Street in the financial industry. And as we know, when the towers crashed and came down, many people in the financial industry were killed on that day, including numerous lawyers who were at financial institutions.
So even aside from the devastating social effects, I imagine there were a lot of personal losses for you.
There were personal losses. I lost almost, I think the count was 27 friends. And those days in New York were filled with so much terror and fear and uncertainty of what would happen next. And I found myself on my living room couch watching CNN over and over again and the collapse of the towers. And I think each time I was becoming re-traumatized. And first couple of days were awful. It was looking for friends in morgues. But then I thought, okay, I've got to do something here. And because so many lawyers, in-house lawyers, were killed on that day, a lot of these financial firms, which needed to get up and running, which needed to get the markets moving, did not know what rules and contracts they were bound by. Their contracts themselves had disappeared along with the towers and their backups and their computer systems. And so as the lawyer who had drafted a lot of these contracts on the other side, I was able to have access to them and begin working with some of the financial institutions to put their contracts in place, to confirm whether their counterparties still existed, and to begin getting these firms up and running again. And I did that not to be paid. I did that on a pro bono basis, part just to have something to do, but also lawyers can really play an important role in the midst of a crisis, and certainly in the aftermath of a crisis.
So you had a very, in some ways very similar, but in some ways very different experience with Katrina, both in terms of the event itself, but also in terms of how you used your lawyering skills afterwards.
So Katrina was, incredibly traumatic for me, and of course for many, many people. After the evacuation order in New Orleans, where I was living, about 6 weeks later, I was able to get back into the city. The city was slowly allowing residents to come back in, and it was a complete disaster zone. And once again, I found myself sort of opening up my home to people who didn't have homes, but also in a state of anxiety, in a state of panic, in a sense of purposelessness. And I went to the FEMA Center and opened up a legal clinic, or sort of educational clinic, to begin helping people collect both their FEMA benefits as well as deal with a number of really complex issues.
So what kinds of things did you see in that FEMA center?
And I should say that the quote legal clinic consisted of a folding table. We had some pens, some paper, and a number of other lawyers, some from Tulane, who like me were on hiatus at the time. We saw a vast number of issues. So there were a lot of landlord-tenant issues. There were issues involving finding people and loved ones, which was not strictly a legal issue, but we had a phone. And one of the things that lawyers are very good with is dealing with bureaucracy. And then from beginning to end of the 4 months that I did this, there were issues involving FEMA benefits. Who got FEMA benefits, the red tape that was created by FEMA, and that changed from getting immediate cash benefits, which of course is something that the government is thinking of doing right now, to the end of trying to get people FEMA trailers and to find them homes. But one of the things that I could do as a lawyer is I had some authority. So in a space in which there was a lot of improvisation and nobody really knew what was going on, to say that one was a lawyer gave not only people who needed help some hope, but it actually made FEMA personnel move along.
So there's a certain amount of social capital that comes with being a lawyer, and I would guess also with being a law student to some degree.
That's exactly right. There is social capital that comes with it, and that social capital can be, you can lend that social capital to act as a broker, to act as an intermediary.
So do you have thoughts about the sorts of things that people might think about doing today as we face this current crisis?
I think that your first question, and one of the things that really inspires me and how I try to think about my obligations as a citizen, is 19th century, late 19th century women's organizations who had.
This is your area of expertise as a legal historian.
I am a legal historian, and their understanding of their duties as citizens. So at the moment, what we can do is we can help our community and our neighbors. So those people who can't get to the stores, those people who don't have money to buy food, those people who are looking even for, who are victims of domestic violence, looking for shelters. Those are the immediate things that can be done.
And there's a blood shortage, actually, because blood drives have been canceled. So people are desperately needed to give blood.
And I know you were doing that.
Well, my husband, I spent too much time in England in the 1980s, so I'm ineligible.
But
my husband did.
Absolutely. So it's not things like at this moment as lawyers that can be done. But as the government begins to, right, provide benefits, and we're all being told that we're all, right, everyone's going to receive $1,000, right? How are those benefits going to actually be distributed? And people who are not savvy with dealing with bureaucracy are going to need help, and that help is going to have to come pretty soon. As people become, right, unemployed, there's a question, they should be eligible for unemployment benefits.
And some of that's already happening because some states have already loosened up their eligibility requirements for unemployment. So people are applying for that even right now.
Absolutely, right. And lawyers are often needed in that area. In addition, we're going to see down the line a lot more issues like involving landlord-tenant, involving domestic violence. One of the things I really am worried about here is that we often say one of the most dangerous places for some women is in their home. Mm-hmm. So as people sort of begin to shelter in place, that can be really dangerous. You know, the question is, are these shelters, right, domestic violence shelters, are closing. So one thing is to see whether there are hotlines that you might be working on, whether they're domestic violence hotlines, whether they're rape crisis hotlines, what needs to be staffed.
And those are things that people can find in their local communities, whether they're lawyers or law students or neither. Those are the kinds of needs that are out there. I think when we post this video, I will be looking for links that I can give to my students for potential opportunities in the Chicago area. But maybe we'll start a Twitter thread and other people can throw up links where they are.
I think one of the crucial things to remember is I have a favorite saying from Jane Addams of Hull House, which is doing community work is more about the individual doing the work and the benefits that they receive than the recipient. The other thing is that we are in a space that is sort of just unknown and somewhat unknowable. And so I think it is absolutely crucial that one engage in improvisation and creativity.
Try different things and see what works and what is of value to the people around you.
And what doesn't exist at the moment. So in New Orleans, and certainly after 9/11, nobody was thinking about, or at this moment, what is the legal need at this moment, and where is the space in which people aren't being served. And so I think that especially law students who are particularly good with technologies, yes, that there is a lot of room for community action. Mm-hmm. And again, it changes. And so the ability to be flexible, to be resilient, to get off the couch, and I'm guilty of being on the couch, right, is crucial, whether that engages completely one's legal skills or it's in the area of thinking about what community means to each of us.
Well, Felice, I really am happy that you're a member of my community. And I want to thank you again for your phone call and for agreeing to do this video.
And the same here, and to everybody who sees this, I wish them the best of health and sturdiness.
And reach out to their loved ones.
Reach out to the loved ones, and also reach out to those you don't know yet.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.